Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. Happy Saturday to everybody. We have a lot to get to in today's video. Softball, baseball, Chaz Lanier committing to our Vols. Football, revenue sharing. Why is everybody so in love with Tennessee's football team all of a sudden? We're going to cover all of that good stuff today. And we want to thank everyone who has sent donations to the channel. And if you would like to send donations, we do have the Cash App little box. It's right up here in the top right-hand corner. And you can donate, as little as $1 on Cash App. It helps us out tremendously because we would love to be able to do this full time. And, we would appreciate any and every little bit. You can also still become a member, and we will be having some more news coming out on this channel, about what's going to be moving forward for us. And we said that we'll be doing it at the end of last week, but we had to kind of push that back. So hopefully next week we'll be able to come out and announce that to everybody. But please, as always, make sure to like and subscribe. We got to talk about the softball and the baseball games yesterday because it was a whole lot of fireworks, right? So starting off with the softball team, we're losing 2-0 versus Alabama in the national tournament in the super regionals. And we just kind of started to get hot at the right time. We scored one run. I want to say that might have been in the 5th, maybe 6th inning. But then right there, actually, I believe that was in the 4th inning. So in the 5th inning, Laura Miller hits a 2-run homer to give us the lead, and we ultimately won the game off of that home run. And then after the game, she was asked in a press conference what she thought about Alabama. She had some choice words. She was like, look, I grew up a Tennessee fan, lifelong Tennessee fan. So, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I feel some type of way about Alabama, and, you love to hear that. But what did you think about that softball game, Pete?
Oh, man, I didn't get to see the game live, but I did see that presser, or at least that clip of her in that presser, man. You love to hear the way she's talking about that. I mean, grew up a Tennessee fan. Okay, it's in my blood. So, yeah, of course I don't like those guys. You know what I mean? Or I don't like those girls. Like, I just love to hear that, man. For her to come out here and say that, I mean, I'm a huge fan of her now. And, man, I just love the culture of that softball team. And I think they got a shot to go out here and win the whole thing. They got a real shot.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I'm going to be watching it very, very closely. But they will be playing again today at 3 p.m. I'm not quite sure what channel that's going to be on, but they will be playing again today. So if you want to check it out, I think that you definitely should check it out. They're a lot of fun to watch. The pitching is excellent. And like I have been saying, the bats get hot at the right times. Now on to the baseball team. We're playing up against Mississippi State in the SEC tournament. And I mean, it's not a huge deal if we don't win this thing. We already lost one game to Vanderbilt. I think if we lose one more, then we're out of that tournament. But we're still going to probably be, a top seed in the national tournament, which is what actually matters. But this is a game that Tennessee starts off winning. We looked really good. I thought that was going to end up blowing Mississippi State out. And then we kind of got into a little bit of a scuffle. And my timeline might be a little bit off on this, but it seems like we were doing well, okay? And then we get into like a little bit of an altercation. And I don't know exactly what happened, but Simo looked like he was juiced up and ready to go. Everyone looked like it. Mississippi State's coach was PO'd. Looked like Tony V was also pissed off. And, after that, man, Mississippi State kind of goes on this run. They score 5 runs, and then they're up. And I was like, dang, the tide has turned tremendously. But we kept on fighting back. We kept on scratching and clawing. And we tied it up in the 7th with 2 runs. But in the 8th, okay, Burke hits a homer to give us the lead, and we ultimately end up winning that game. And the umpires told both teams, hey, we don't want y'all shaking hands after this one. So that one was fun. But, Pete, did you get a chance to take a look at any of that game?
Yeah, so I saw a few of the highlights of that one, and that was, I mean, Tony V's established that culture, man. This team's going to fight. They ain't never going to back down. They ain't never out of the game. They're going to be able to take the adversity, and we kind of welcome a little bit of adversity. We welcome a team that's going to kind of come chirp a little bit, get feisty. Tony V talked about having that Italian in his blood, kind of having that fight in his blood, and that permeates to the whole team, you can tell. And I just love this team, man. I love this team, whether they play. Blake Burke's been clutch for us all season, comes through clutch again. So this is a team, like you said, maybe it doesn't really matter if we win the SC tournament. I feel like, when we were number 1 seed, we didn't do well in the NCAA tournament. So maybe us not being number 1 seed would maybe help us a little bit. You just never know how it works out. Baseball is one of those weird kind of games. But I think right now we're just getting ready for the big tournament, and we should be ready to go. Last time to go.
Absolutely. So now we got to talk about Chaz Lanier. Obviously, that's a huge pickup. We've been talking about that one for about like a month or so now, and we felt like that's exactly what this team needed. That already had a good roster, right? I mean, several players left us from last year's team, but I think that we had a pretty solid core of some young players. Big influx of talent, like 3-4 transfer players, but Chaz Lanier is really the headline guy because we're talking about can we replace Dalton Connect? I don't think that you can, but Chaz Lanier would probably be the closest player to be able to do that in this year's transfer portal. So adding him is huge. 6'4", 200 pounds from North Florida, tested the waters to see if he could go into the NBA, right? And they tell him, hey, look, we need for you to come back one more season, work on your defense. That was something that was really specified by some of those scouts, and it was talked about. So he comes back, and what better coach to come to than Rick Barnes, than your home state team in Tennessee, because he's from Nashville, and, hopefully get us over that hump, right? Like, get us to a national title, get us to win it. I think that he can do it. But, P, what do you think about Chaz Lanier?
Man, I think that's the biggest pickup for us all off season. Obviously, I mean, he's a guy comes in 6'4", 6'5", creates his own shot, can get to the basket. Can find the open guy as well. We needed that guy that can create his own shot after losing DK last year. We brought in Dubar, who I think he can create his own shot. Bluechip, I think if I'm saying that right, he can kind of create his own shot too. But I think having that guy that can handle the ball, get to the basket. It's fourth quarter. We want to kind of control the ball, but also be able to finish with points. I think he's the guy you kind of go to down the stretch of the game. So, I mean, huge pickup, especially you consider UK and BYU offering all that money to him, but he still chose to come to the kind of the hometown team, if you will. That just speaks to Rick Barnes, that culture he's building, and just players understand, like, if I want to get developed, you know what I mean? Like, there's really not a better place to go than to go play for Rick Barnes at Tennessee. So huge pickup, man. I can't wait to see how much he gets better, from last year throughout this season coming up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, he's a guy that can really shoot. That's something else that we talked about last season, like off of last year's team, because it was like we had players that could shoot every now and then, but now it just feels like with the influx of talent, we've got so many players that can really shoot from the outside, from the inside. And then we've got a lot more length. That was something else that I said, man, we've got to add some more size. We got guys like Felix Acapara from Ohio State. He's basically a 7-footer playing center. And he's not a, shooter. He's not a stretch guy, but down in the paint, man, he can play great defense. I think he's averaging 2.4 blocks last season. And he's going to be the guy that we can kind of feed down there. We saw that there was some mismatch problems versus Edey last season, but this is a guy that I feel like if we see somebody else like that, that's a 7-foot-plus player, he can help us out tremendously there. So that looks good. Then, you talked about Igor, right? This is a guy that's a stretch 4. And he can really shoot. I think he was shooting at about 30-something%. 38%, 39%, P? What was it? Okay, yeah. So he's shooting 38% from 3, about 49% from the field. And he's also shooting about 82% from free throw, which is really big. You need those big players that can move around and stuff to be able to hit those on a very consistent basis. I think that last year's team kind of lacked in that as well. So that's another upgrade. And then you've got Darlin Stone Dubar, who's listed at 6'8". I think he came in on his visit at about 6'6". The question for me is, did Tennessee measure him without his shoes on or with the shoes on? Because, a lot of times, P, basketball players, like at the combines and stuff, they're measuring in with their shoes on. But he's 6'6", right? And he's a guy that can play small forward. He's kind of got an awkward shot. That's the same thing that we could say about Chaz. Their shots are a little bit unorthodox. I don't know if we'll try to change that, but he can create his own shot. He plays really good defense, almost averages about a block per game. He's shooting at about 54% from the field and 40% from 3. Not the best free throw shooter, shooting at about 74%, but again, that's just another player that we're adding that can really, bring a lot to this team, right? I feel like we're kind of upgrading on the court with all these players. And the biggest question while we're talking about offense is, can they play defense as well? Well, I think the defense is all about effort. And Rick Barnes is going to coach to defense and effort. So we should be fine there. But P, let's talk about some players that we already have on this team, because ZZ's coming back. We got guys like Gainey, who's coming back. He looked really strong. Meshack, he's been strong. He looked a lot better scoring as well. But on defense, I think that I think that that's where you like him at the most, P. You talking about how much of a dog he is playing on defense.
He almost should play football. You know what I mean? Like, he's just one of those type of guys, man. He gets in your face, has good footwork, athletic. I just think this team, the way Rick Barnes has built this roster, you look at last season, okay? We didn't really have anybody shoot 3 out of DK consistently. We get Triple J would hit some threes. We get a few guys hit some threes every now and then. And then we couldn't stop guys like Edey down low, which really nobody stopped him all year, but couldn't really stop those guys. We went to the portal. We added, like you said, a lot of length, 6'10", 6'11", 7-foot type guys. And then we've added guys that are shooting, over 37% from 3. So now we have 4 or 5 shooters out there at a time. Oh yeah, and by the way, we're long.
Mhm.
We can get to the basket. We can protect the rim, do all that. So just that roster on paper right now, I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So another one though that I'm really excited about is going to be Cam Carr, and we talked a lot about. Well, we didn't talk a lot about him, but in spurts, whenever we got to see him play, he looks really good, and everybody, all the insiders and coaches, players, they're raving about him. Kind of like almost like an Arion Carter last season, right? Like in spring, where everyone's like, "Oh man, this kid's going to be good." Maybe even like a Bull Carter. You know what I mean? Everyone is talking about Cam Carr. So now we're talking about who's going to be the starters because he could play two, he could play three at about 6'5", 6'6", and he can shoot the daggum lights out. But I love what we have. And oh, by the way, JP Estrella, another stretch four. He can also play five. Love what we saw from him once that confidence came on. So yeah, man, look, this is the everything school, and I think that we have a lot to be excited about with this basketball team. We'll be covering the offseason as closely as we possibly can. Whatever we have, we're going to be bringing it to y'all. But we would love to hear y'all's thoughts and comments off of Chaz Lanier. Huge pickup. He, like I said, beating out teams that are offering a lot more money to him in NIL. And we're about to start talking about getting paid here in just a second. But that speaks to the culture that this team has. So I feel like we should be very, very excited about that. Now, let's move on to the NCAA settlement, okay? It's a $2.75 billion settlement, and they will be paying that retroactively from 2016. It sounds like they're splitting it up. The NCAA is going to be taking, 41% of it. And it looks like the power conferences are going to be responsible for 24% of that. Group of five is responsible for 10%. FCS, which is D1AA, responsible for 13%. And then non-D1 schools are responsible for 12%. I feel like FCS and especially the non-D1 programs really are going to suffer significantly from this. And if anyone's going to have any, real consequences, I would say it's probably them. But P, there's a lot more for us to just kind of talk about outside of that. Just understanding that part of it, what the whole settlement was about. But there's some things that were added to it with the revenue sharing, and we know that a lot of people have already covered this information. So we're not going to beat you over the head with it. But to me, P, the highlights of all this is going to be that they came up with this revenue sharing model based off of the Power Four programs and what they're making on a year in and year out basis. They averaged it. They came up with a number of about $100 million. So it's going to be 22% of that. And this is interesting because some teams are going to be, making less than that on average. Some teams are going to be making way more than that. So that 22% of only, well, I don't want to say of only 100 million, but of 100 million is going to mean it's going to be different to different programs. I think that Tennessee is going to be fine with this because if we were to just go off of, we'll say 2023, 22% of our, yearly revenue was 44.46 million. So, whereas it's only going to be about 22 million now, I mean, we can we could pay double that and we would still be fine. Let's talk about a couple of other programs here, P. Alabama would be 43 million, UGA 46.2 million, Florida would be 41.6 million, Texas 59.6 million, Michigan 50.5 million, Ohio State is the most with 61.5 million, but then Oregon would only have been averaging 20.1 million. So there would be a program that would kind of suffer from this. So just off of what I said right there, P, I know I just said a whole mouthful. What do you think about that right there, just the revenue sharing model that is being proposed so far by the NCAA and by the Power Four conferences?
So that 22%, that's of obviously the revenue that the entire program made. So like all the sports teams. So,
right.
Kind of point you brought up, we were talking about this off air, how is that going to be divvied up, amongst the different sports when you consider, like I said, football being the largest generator of revenue compared to, a sport like tennis or something, like there's so many different sports. How are they going to split that up? What's kind of the methods or models that they have in place? Do the schools have the ability to kind of determine how they split that up? Those are like the questions that come with it. But I think the 20% number, I'm not sure where they get that number from. I kind of think it should be, maybe a little bit more than that. Just because, if you look at it, who's bringing in this money, right? The daggum athletes. Now, I know there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, right? There's training that's involved. There's facilities, all the stuff the school contributes to it. But I wonder how they came to that 22% number. So to me, it seems a little bit low. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know how they came up with it.
Yeah,
but,
right.
I think these guys should be getting, close to 50%, you know what I mean? Because they're the ones that people are paying to see. So I honestly think it should be higher. I don't think that's going to happen, obviously, but I don't know. That's kind of my first initial reaction was 20% seems a little bit low compared to the value these guys have. But I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I really don't know enough about it to know for sure, but we'll see. We'll see. It's definitely gonna change the game for sure.
Yeah, so now that's a very interesting point, just because that 22%, so that's really what that is. It's that's the cap, right? So you can pay up to that, is what they're saying. And it's supposed to be a 4% increase
Mm.
every year over the next like 10 years. And I think that they said something about like on the fourth year, they'll maybe take a look at how much money everybody's making, and they might change it all up. But that's the cap, like that's as much as you can pay. And I've heard so many different things, right? Like, I mean, people are all over the place with it just because there's nothing that's set in stone. It's a whole lot of speculation. But some of the things that I have heard is that some teams will kind of go over that cap limit. So we've heard some things like, will there be a luxury tax if you go over it or not? And then there's something else. People are talking about how much money can scholarships go towards that cap limit, and I think it's like $2.5 million dollars can be allocated from your scholarships to that cap. So I mean, there's a couple of like exceptions to this. But I mean, it's really interesting because, like you said, P, how did they come up with this number of 22%? Where is that coming from? And like how are you going to? I'm very confused about like how can you say, okay, we're going to be sharing revenue because we have to do it legally. Wouldn't you think that there should be some sort of a set number that would be like a legal number, right? Like that says, okay,
Mm.
this is what you have to do legally, but it's not that. And I guess some programs might not even be paying their players. So how are they going to be getting away with that? That's where I'm very confused about all this stuff. It's very muddy. And I mean, people are
Mm.
saying that within the next probably 6 to 14 months or something, it should be kind of like set in stone. And they are anticipating that in 2025, we will actually have that revenue sharing. But I don't know. I had this feeling, P, that it might not look maybe any type of way like people are saying it is, just because it's so many question marks. Title
Mm.
IX is another one. I think that Charlie Baker came out and was like, look, Title IX doesn't count with monetary compensation and things like that. But we all know, man, like Charlie Baker probably don't know what the heck he's talking about, because they're in this mess right now. He might not be the most informed person on this. So I just think that it could go in a million
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
directions.
Well, I don't know a ton about Title IX. I don't know the letter of the law. I do remember I learned about it like when I was in college,
Mhm.
and I want to say it has something to do with years ago. Forgive me, I'm a little bit ignorant on it, but years ago there was like a basketball, a college basketball team. The men's team had like nice weight room, nice locker room, but the
Mhm.
women's team didn't. And so I think that kind of is what sparked the whole thing. And so my understanding is it's more along the lines of like facilities, access to resources, as well as like, for example, when I was at Vanderbilt, we had a women's soccer team, but we didn't have a men's soccer team. So like, we had men's baseball, but we didn't have like women's softball. So you had to have the same like access to sports or whatever. You know what I mean? Like the same, all that stuff the same. But when it comes to the revenue, like I said, I don't know the letter of law, but I don't know. I don't see how you can say that. Oh, men's and women's basketball needs to be getting the same amount of revenue when men's brings in more. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it just,
Right.
to me, that's just like a common sense approach to it. But I mean, when you get to legalities, it's the letter of the law, and all your T's got to be crossed, all your I's got to be dotted. So, it's gonna be interesting, man. Like it's like these next couple of years going through all this litigation stuff. It's gonna be crazy. But I think once we get to the other end of it, a few years from now, I think we're gonna have a nice, hopefully a nice, solid kind of model going forward.
Yeah.
And I think it's gonna be better for all the athletes. Everybody's getting paid. You know what I mean? So I think it's gonna be good going forward, but it's gonna be some growing pains, I think, early on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it most definitely will be. And the other thing, and I'm gonna kind of come back to your points here in just a second, but I just wanted to throw this one out there. NIL is not going away. A lot of people keep on asking about that. I don't think that's ever going to go away unless we turn these players and student athletes into employees. And then at that point, I don't think even then that you could do that. So, but that's going to be the next thing that I feel like is coming. And then we'll probably see some harder rules, like some rules that can actually be enforced as far as the transfer portal, because that's something that a lot of people have been worried about. I think that if there's anything that needs to get fixed in college football, especially, it's that transfer portal. Being able to transfer at any point, any time, it's got to be dwindled down some. Like they've got to find a way to do it. And I've heard that maybe what's going to happen with the revenue sharing is that you can put these players on some contracts, and in those contracts, you can say, well, you've got to stay here for X amount of years, or like whatever. Again, I don't know. From a legal perspective how realistic that is. I would think that they would have to actually be employees, before you can do that, we know that the unions are coming. That really, I think that needs to come because we need someone to speak on behalf of these players. We have so many people with so much money, billions of dollars, obviously, that are going to bat for these institutions, right? But no one's really able to speak up for these players outside of these lawyers and stuff. So we've got to get something more set in stone from that perspective. But P, like you just had kind of talked about with the Title IX, everything's got to be equal, right? And I think that that's right. But I don't think that necessarily counts whenever you're talking about how much these players are getting paid almost off of their name, image, and likeness. And it sounds like that's what they're going to try to do is say, hey, this revenue sharing is going to be based off of your name, image, and likeness, and you'll get paid more based off of the sport that you're playing and just based off of how marketable you are, like how many jersey sales, all that type of stuff. That's how I think it's probably going to end up going. But also, there's some positives to this, right? Because something else that's being thrown out there is a scholarship increase. And it sounds like there will be an unlimited amount of scholarships, but there's going to be a roster limit. So that's going to kind of hurt football in some points. Kind of sounds like walk-ons is going to be a thing of the past. But whenever you talk about a sport like baseball, where you have 32 players and it's only like 11 or 12 of them are probably on full scholarship, it sounds like now we can have 32 players on a full scholarship. So baseball should be a sport that more and more people will be playing coming up. And you'll probably see more and more players maybe stick around and play in college baseball as opposed to going on to the major leagues or going overseas, things like that because of that. And it will also give us 32 full scholarships for softball. So I think that those things are going to be really important moving forward, Pete.
And that's the thing, like, it's going to affect each sport differently, right? Like I said, it may hurt football a little bit. We lose some numbers, but obviously sports like baseball, which kind of always scratched my head about when I was up at Vandy, I had so many great baseball players on that team, but only a handful of them were on full scholarship. Because like initially when I was coming out of high school, I thought, everybody up here is on full scholarship. But no, like a lot of those guys aren't. Even though they're studs, they're players are going to go to the major leagues, whatever. They weren't on freaking full scholarship. So I think that's huge. Like you said, kind of my first thought when, when I heard about the scholarships was, man, those freaking walk-ons, you know what I mean? Because I played with some walk-ons that I loved up at Vandy. We got some guys we love here at Tennessee too, but it's I don't know how they're going to work those guys. Are they going to put some of those guys on scholarship, or are those guys completely replaced? We'll go out here and get some guys from high school, some 4 or 5 star guys, whatever, 3-star guys, and put them on the roster. And our walk-ons is completely done. Is it going to be a deal where maybe you can maybe we have a practice squad? Maybe walk-ons can come and be a practice squad, whatever. There's so many moving parts to it. But I think overall, like I said, it's going to be growing pains, but it's going to be good for the sports going forward once we get everything settled and figured out.
Absolutely. And so, again, they're talking about trying to, well, it sounds like the first offer was or the first thing that was thrown out there, just as far as scholarships, was 85. And a lot of the football coaches was like, nah, we don't want to do this because, like a football team normally carries about 120, 130 players. At least in college. So, 85 is not going to cut it, even though 85 is the scholarship limit currently. So sounds like it's going to be anywhere from, maybe like 100 to maybe they'll go up to 120. We don't know. But that's going to be really big because, having those guys that probably would have been walk-ons before, if they can get a full scholarship, that would be great. But Pete, to your point, everything that you just said, I'm on the same page with you because it could end up being like, okay, the guys that were more of like walk-on caliber turn into the practice squad, and then maybe you can just add more depth. So you're talking about the teams, that like Georgia, LSU, all that, teams that have a lot of talent in state, and there's not a whole lot of competition in state. They can build some monstrous rosters. Tennessee, we already pretty much run the state of Tennessee, but it's just not as much talent as it is. Alabama and Auburn, I think that there's enough talent in the state of Alabama that they can kind of split that up and keep a lot of their players in state. So that is something for us to be a little bit cautious about moving forward. But I think that Tennessee's doing a great job. This program, being where it's at this point with all these changes coming, we could not be positioning ourselves in a better spot at a better time. If Tennessee goes out this season and takes care of business, right? If we can make it to the playoffs, make a push, show, hey, if you're good and you come here, we can go far, right? Like we can be championship caliber. We've got great coaches. We have, all the resources that you could ever want. We're going to help you, on and off the field, but also whenever you're seeing players getting drafted, which I feel like this season, Tennessee has a really good chance to have several players get drafted. That's going to help us out so much moving forward because teams like Georgia and Alabama for years have been able to get discounts off of NIL because they've got winning programs. And now that Tennessee's getting there, we should be able to start getting those same types of discounts. And then we can allocate money to some other things instead of having to worry about, man, we got to spend so much here, spend so much there. We can just have our work more or less speak for itself moving forward. Now, I do want to get to the 865 Live P because, man, this is a huge weekend coming up. So many players that are blue chip caliber. And we talked about on a video earlier this week about, man, look, we think that we need to get at least 2 more 5 stars in this class and at least 5 more 4 stars, right? So 2 more 5 stars and 5 more 4 stars if we want to be a top 5, or if we want for this class to finish in the top 5. David Sanders is coming back. All right, so he's coming back to Knoxville, and he's going to be visiting Clemson, I believe, after he leaves from Tennessee. But then he's going to be coming back again for an OV. I've already seen that Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons over there at On3 have predicted David Sanders to be committed to our Volunteers. So that should be 1 5-star. We feel pretty good about him. He's going to be up there spending a whole bunch of time with GMAC. We've all heard about that. But then there's another one in Isaiah Campbell, who's an edge player. That's another position of need for us. He's a 5-star right now on On3 and 24/7 Sports. Right now, he is committed to USC, but he's going to be taking visits to Tennessee and to Florida. I like our chances versus Florida because they've got a whole lot of stuff going on it doesn't sound good for them. I don't understand why anyone would continue to try to go to Florida. Tennessee has a lot more to offer right now. Right? I feel like we're on the better side of things right now. So don't be surprised if we can land him as well. That's another 5-star. And then we've got Jamie French, P. We all know, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen with him, but he's a 6 foot, 185-pound, 5-star wide receiver from Florida. Everything kind of sounds like Texas. But what do you think about Jamie French at this point in the game, P?
Man, so I haven't heard anything from him in a little while. But the last I was hearing from him was a few months ago. I was getting the vibe. He's all Tennessee, and I feel like I've been reading these kids pretty well.
Okay.
Now, I don't know when he plans on announcing and committing. We have a long season. I think the season's going to determine a lot of stuff. But if he's got to commit before the season, I think he's committing to Tennessee. I just feel like he loves GMAC. I think he loves the staff. He loves the way we can use him, our scheme. I think he loves Knoxville. Like, yeah. I just get the vibe he's going to want to commit. And then when you look at GMAC, right? He committed. We start getting a whole lot of attention from other big time recruits.
Yeah,
I think we get David Sanders in the boat. I'm not sure when he's going to announce, but if we can get him to announce, if we can lock him down on his OV in a couple weeks, hey, don't leave here without freaking committing. We're not going to put the pressure on like that. But if he does commit before he leaves, I think that would be huge. Let's get some other guys in. Laganza, hey, or not to him yet, but I love Jamie French, and I think he's going to commit. But he might be waiting on maybe another big domino to fall before he pulls the trigger on that.
Yeah, that's interesting, Pete, because I think the exact opposite. I think that if he would commit to Tennessee, it would probably happen if he waits until maybe 4 or 5 weeks into the season, because he strikes me as a guy that wants to go play at a program that he feels like, man, I know for sure that they're doing a good job with these wide receivers. And Tennessee's kind of shown that, right? But not on the level of the Buckeyes or of Texas. And that's the 2 schools that I feel like he's trending to the most. So if he sees us doing a good job with our wide receivers, especially a guy like Mike Matthews as a true freshman, then I think he might say, okay, you know what I'm saying? I could see this, because I do feel the same way like UP, just about how he feels with GMAC, with the coaching staff. I think that he loves everything, but what he's looking for, as far as I can tell, is a team that will develop him into an NFL caliber wide receiver, or the team that gives him the best chances at that. And he might not see Tennessee as that at this point. I think he's maybe leaning a little bit more towards Texas, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm definitely not counting him as a player that will be committing to our Volunteers. But there is another one that is, that's going to be coming up on the 865 Live that's kind of on the brink of being a 5-star, and you just brought him up. That's Shady Hayward. I think that he's going to work himself into a 5-star, something like he's all Vol. Coming up for the 865 Live, he's going to be visiting as well coming up over the summer, I think on the 21st. Once he gets done with his visit, I would not be surprised if he just commits. He's already talked to Steve Wiltfong about, man, I'm going to look good playing the orange, or he said that my future's going to be bright playing the orange. So I think that he's trending for us, P. But what do you think about Shady? Just real quick.
Well, man, love Shady, man. I think if he doesn't commit on that visit, then that's more of an alarm.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. It's so hard to keep the momentum when a guy's been filling you for so long. can we keep this to the finish line? Hopefully the staff can keep him, get him the freaking sideline. He's a stud. Is he a linebacker? Is he a freaking safety? We like him at safety. We like him at backer. We like him wherever he wants to freaking play. Get him on the roster. We need more guys like him on the team.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the next guy that I want to talk about is at another position of need, and that is Nick Moore, 4-star interior offensive lineman. He's from Tennessee. Sounds like he's trending to Tennessee. He's getting a lot more offers now. Teams are starting to maybe take more notice of him. But, we just got that big, interior offensive line commit in Anthony Agumuro. And just adding another guy like Nick Moore would be huge. We've talked about it. That's really the spot that we need to be adding bodies at, right, P, is in the interior of the offensive line. Now, you always want to add some tackles, but I think some of the tackles that we might end up getting could end up moving to the inside because that's where we need more help at, I think, a little bit earlier. So that's a really good look. The next player is going to be Bryce Jenkins. He's another 4-star interior offensive lineman. I think that he could potentially work up to a 5-star as well, but we'll just count him as a 4-star at this point. He's another one trending very heavily to our volunteers. And then Onis Cannonberry, 4-star cornerback. I think that we're in a really good spot for him. Now, could we add him? P, I think that we could. Love his film. He's a guy that I think, just like everyone else that we get, very, very versatile inside of that secondary. But P, have you seen much of his film?
I'm not. What's his size? Was he about 6'1.5", 6'2"?
Yeah. So he's close to that, but he's really long. That's what I love about him. It's not just about being tall, but having those really long arms. He's got good hips, good feet. You can tell he's got a good passion for the game. He just fits everything that we always want in our secondary. I would love to add him. I think that he could play anywhere inside of that secondary. Guys like Dylan Lewis and Tyler Redmond, those guys are studs too, very versatile. So I think that this class is already underrated, but, adding these guys coming up on the 865 Live, and if they are coming up, then you know that they're very interested in our program. So that's a really big one. I'm watching him pretty closely. And then Jared Smith, 4-star edge player. Right now it's down between us, South Carolina, and it sounds like Florida. He's from Hoover, Alabama. Now, P, I think that he's a little bit more of a strong side DN, but I guess he could be more of a Leo as well. I don't really see him being a player that moves that well in space to be playing at Leo, but he's one that I feel like we really, really need. And, we talked about all the ends that we might be losing this year in the draft, so on and so forth. We need some more strong side DNs, but he's one that I feel, I think that we both feel pretty confident with, P.
Yeah. Jared Smith, man, that's the thing, this team, we don't know what this roster is going to be next season. So the more of these, you look at, the guys we're going to lose at that strong side DN position. Mm-hmm. And we don't know. We could get pretty much all those guys back. We could lose 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them. Mm-hmm. So we have to, almost kind of overstock the cupboard in a way. Hey, if everybody stays, so what? Let's bring in, 2 or 3 more of these type of guys. So strong side DN is a position I don't think we've recruited super well lately. Obviously, Tyree Wesby's been, we think is going to be the type of guy, but those are the type of guys we got to go for. These 6'5", 265, 270 guys coming here, put your damn hand in the dirt, stop the run and rush the passer. You know what I mean? So, the more guys we get like that, the better off. And I just love the way Heupel, Gardner, Tim Banks recruiting that defensive side of the ball. They're getting the right type of guys. They're going for the right type of guys. Can they land enough of them? And I think they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Really, if you think about the 2024 class, we got guys like Carson Gentle, Kellen Lindstrom. Those guys playing a strong side DN, they ain't no. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through these next few players because it's one that I do want to highlight. So LeVar Arrington II, that is the son of LeVar Arrington that played in the NFL and at Penn State. He's a 3-star linebacker, 6'3", 200. But you would have to anticipate that he has that pedigree, right? His dad played in the league, so he's probably going to be a stud. He's going to be coming up, and hopefully, we can close out on him or, just make a really good impression to be able to land him. And then we've got Tylen Lee, 4-star edge player. He's from Florida, 6'5", 210 pounds. I think that he's another one that could be Leo or strong side DN. But the one that I really wanted to get to is London Baronis, and he's the son of Rob Baronis, former Titans kicker who, passed away in a car accident back in 2014. Now, his father played at Auburn. He right now is ranked as the number 12 kicker and the number 46 punter. He might be more of a punter, P, but we haven't talked about kickers at all. I do feel like this is the time for us to be starting to look at one, and he's a really good one, plays at Brentwood. I think that Tennessee is in a good spot for him, but he has a whole bunch of offers, man. He's actually a guy that, kickers don't really ever get ratings, but he would probably be equal to a 4-star, maybe a higher level 3-star. You know what I'm saying? So I think that this is a really big deal,
Yeah.
y'all. We can't, we had to show those kickers love all the time, baby.
That's a pretty huge deal. I mean, I remember Rob Baronis. One thing I remember about him is he had a freaking strong leg. This guy was booting the daggone ball 55 plus. So you have to figure that's, probably a little bit genetic. Okay. His son's probably got the same boot on him. And heck, your dad was a freaking NFL great kicker.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that, he at least spent some time kind of, teaching him. And unfortunately, he did pass. But, I'm sure he was able to work with him a little bit, maybe teach him fundamentals from a young age. So, I mean, he's, and we don't have any freaking kickers. So I think that's a big deal.
That's a real big
He's a
deal.
guy, as quiet as kept, is one of the more important guys up there at 8'6" this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, too, I just want to point this out for everybody. I believe that his long is 44 yards as a kicker. And I don't know what his long is as a punter, but, man, he looks really good punting. I mean, I think that might be where he kind of gets in that. But we'll see. Now, okay, we got to talk about this, P. Last segment of the day. So much love is being shown to our Tennessee Volunteers in the national media now. And what I'm noticing is our fans are starting to buy in a lot more, but we've been riding this wave. We've been telling y'all for the longest that this team looks great on paper. And then we said, well, let's see how we look in spring. We said, wow, man, we look really good in spring. And I want to say, P, once we got Jackson Moy, once he transferred in, that's when I said, man, like whenever you look at this depth that we have on this line, we've got to have one of the best lines in the entire country. So, I think I said that, I think that we said that before even the coaching staff came out and publicly said it. We also told y'all leading up into this season about James Pierce. We said, man, look, watch out for James Pierce. P, I think that you was very vocal about that. You said, man, look, James Pierce has a chance to be really special. Lo and behold, he's now rated as the #1 player, not just on defense, not just at Tennessee, but in the entire country. So now, okay, let's talk about some of On3's rankings, right? With the offensive line, they have Tennessee ranked number 9. All right, so we're right behind Miami and we're right in front of Ole Miss. And then for the defensive line, they also have us ranked at number 9. We are right behind Florida State and right ahead of Penn State. So we all know that it's about front 7 play. But P, what do you think just off of this list right here, or off of these two lists with our, with both of our fronts? Do you think that we're in the right spot, honestly speaking?
Well, we'll start the O-line. O-line, I mean, heck, they don't put us at 9. Okay, I'll take it. I mean, that's the thing. We still don't really know what that depth is behind kind of that starting 5. Right. So what goes into it? I was saying, hey, we're just looking at the starting group. Okay, if they're looking at the starting group, I mean, heck, we got to at least be 9, I think. I think you look at, Lance Hurd, look at, left guards unproven, okay? Whoever's there, I think it's going to be solid, center, regard. I think we have a really, really good group. I think we are like a top 5 type of group, I think, starting 5. But it's just if a guy goes down, what does that look like?
Right.
And I think on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, heck, you guys at 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
I mean, heck, who's ahead of us? Okay. I mean, I look at this. I mean, these are some good teams, okay? They typically have good D-lines. But I just think with what we know we have on the interior, starting inside out, I don't know how many of those teams have, 4 or 5 guys on the interior that they're going to be able to rotate in that 0 drop off. Okay. And you may even almost get better the deeper you go on that depth chart on the interior. And then, seriously, just as weird as that sounds, and then, look at your edge guys, James Pierce. Okay. And I've been very vocal about Jordan Ross being a James Pierce 2.0. I mean, he's coming in at his size already. He may even be as athletic as him already. Like he's going to be even better, I think, long term. Not saying this year, but long term. And then we talk about Caleb Herring as another guy that I think, from what I saw from him in the spring game, just a couple of flashes, I think he's due for a breakout year soon. What James Pierce had. So I mean, and we haven't talked about Chevron Bradley, Joshua Joseph. Okay, so we're loaded there.
Yeah. Strong
side DNs. My only question. Tyree West shows something in the bowl game. See if he can do it consistently. Dominic Bailey. He's kind of your. Hey, I'm gonna come here. I'm gonna give you what I got. You know what I mean? He's not gonna wow you, but he's gonna go in there and do his job.
Yeah, solid.
And then Tyree. Yeah. And then Weathersby as kind of your guy you expect really pop. The freshman. So I think that group.
Well, hold on. Jason Jenkins now. Jason Jenkins. Everyone's been raving about him.
Oh yeah, I forgot he didn't leave. Yeah, Jason Jenkins, another guy.
Jenkins is still here.
So I mean, that group to me, they're not 9. I mean, I know some good teams, but I put this group as like a top 3 at least.
At least.
Group. Yeah, in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about at least because, I mean, just looking at the list, it's Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Oregon, Clemson, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Florida State, then Tennessee, then Penn State. Yeah, I mean, I think that Ohio State's line is very deep. I watched their spring game, very similar to how ours is. Now, they have players that were probably ranked higher than ours were coming out of high school, several 5-stars everywhere.
Mm.
But we have players that were only ranked as 4-stars, and now they're the number one player in the entire daggum country. So you have to understand what we're doing here. We're taking players that have been undervalued, underrated, and we're coaching them up. We got the best defensive line coach on the face of this planet in Rodney Garner. I mean, listen, Ohio State doesn't have that, right? Like, they've got some good guys. They've got a lot of talent. But for you to put Michigan over us with all that they lost, okay, I think that that's a joke. Georgia, who's rushing the freaking pass? I'm sure they got a guy or two, but I like us better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're deeper. I think that we coach our guys better. And I mean, our pass rush was better than Georgia's last season. So what are you talking about there? They just got big bodies, and that's pretty much it. And then Oregon is an absolute total joke. Clemson is a joke. Ole Miss, I can understand because they added some pieces to it, but we're better than them. Notre Dame usually has some guys, but I think that that's a joke. Florida State, they've got some guys. That's a joke. There's no reason that those teams should be up over Tennessee, right? So put Tennessee, I would say 1A, 1B with Ohio State, and that's fair in my opinion. Offensive line, I'm on the same page with you, P. Yeah, we don't know what the depth is going to look like, but Cube said, hey, we got guys like Larry Johnson that he's been hearing about. We hadn't heard about him from any of the insiders. Thought that he looked pretty solid, but now we've got two guys that we feel pretty comfortable in playing at tackle. There's not a whole lot of teams that have a lot of depth at offensive tackle. Now LSU, we know that they have it because Lance Hurd comes from there. He wasn't starting, and we said that right, Pete. Just like whenever we're breaking down his film. I mean, their offensive line has got to be the best in the entire country. If we're getting this guy as a backup from there, he's going to come in and maybe end up being the best on our entire offensive line. But, I mean, pretty much outside of that, I think that we're solid. I think that we're sneaky solid because so many veterans that are playing in backup roles on that offensive line. So just as far as kind of knowing what to do and having played Power 5 football, SEC football, they know what to expect. So I think that we're going to be fine there. It's not a whole lot. I don't feel like it's not going to be a crazy drop-off. And I've kind of said that before, but the more that I'm looking at, the more that I'm thinking about it, I don't think that it's going to be as big of a drop off. And our freshman, P, that freshman class looks really special. I love what I'm seeing from them. Have not seen Bennett Warren just yet, but he could end up being another guy that could help us out as a potential backup tackle if he comes in with his body right, with his mind right, and puts that work in. So, yeah, I think that we're fine there. But it's funny, though, P, that the national media giving us all of this, all of this love. And part of the reason that I showed y'all Cube, on this channel like a couple of weeks ago was just to show you that he's probably the best in the business at breaking down teams for real. And he's primarily working with the SEC. So he still has a lot of teams. He's got 16 teams that he has to cover now. But just in hearing him breaking down our team, our players, thought that he did a really good job. But you could kind of tell that he doesn't know as much as the people that straight up just cover Tennessee. So my whole point in saying that is this. You don't have to always just wait for the national experts to tell you that your team is good. Believe what you see. And I know that we've gone through several years of some hard times as volunteer fans, but this team is the real deal. We don't have to always be so, pessimistic, right? Like, we can have some optimism about our bunch. We got some guys that can ball. And I think that Coach Heupel has done a phenomenal job of building a great culture. Listening to, guys like Tyler Redmond speak on our channel, guys like Justin Baker speaking on this channel, you can tell the types of guys that we're going out and getting. And on and off the field, they completely get it. Very high football IQ. They're gentlemen. And, I think that culture goes a very long way. But P, what are your closing thoughts with, with this team and all the hype that we've been getting from the national media?
Well, I mean, heck, my first thought is, what took you guys so freaking long, And I get it. It's like you said, kind of battered Vols syndrome. I think the national media has that too. They're always going to be reluctant to kind of believe in this team. And I mean, I don't know why it's coming now, because spring ball ended however long ago. We didn't really hear anything then, but it's like all of a sudden for the last week, couple weeks, we've been just hearing, so many positive things. Heck, I seen Josh Pate, 247 Sports, talk about us as kind of the sleeper team in the SEC. Yeah. Team you wouldn't be surprised they'll go out there and win the whole thing. Like, where you weren't saying stuff before, like all of a sudden now you are. I don't know what it is, but I know I can speak for you and I, and we call it like we freaking see it. Yeah. This is the team that we watch, okay? And we look at other teams really to compare how they look compared to us. We see a team that's great in the trenches, both sides of the ball, has skill guys out the wazoo, has a quarterback that can do it all, potentially on paper has a chance to be, let's not get crazy, but let's get crazy, potentially be the best quarterback we've seen in the last, 50, 100 years. I mean, this guy's 6'6", 215, 220, can run, can throw, is strong, athletic playmaker, has a Johnny Manziel to him, can create,
Mhm.
natural leader, fearless warrior. I
Yeah.
mean, he can do it all for you. Oh, and by the way, we like our linebackers, we like our secondary. That's the question mark a lot of people have. Secondary. Well, the people who know this team understand what, yeah, maybe a little less experience, but
Mhm.
way more athleticism. Okay. Team that should be way better in the back end than what we were previous year. So I think top to bottom, this team is just leaps and bounds above where they were last year. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow the national media is finally starting to realize that maybe maybe they found your channel and they've been freaking watching your videos. I don't know.
Yeah, so you know what, that's funny, just because what ended up happening is once James Pierce got all that hype, and I think that really started from Pro Football Focus. That's when people started to pay more attention, right? Like, you started to hear everyone saying, "Oh yeah, James Pierce really is number one," and then they started to buy and say, "Oh well, maybe their defensive line really is really good." Okay, and then after the spring, you're seeing the offensive line with several players out going up against that same D line that we all know is really good, and they're holding their own. So you're hearing more positivity, it's more buzz because people are starting to pay attention. But most of these guys, right? Like, I'm not talking about Cube. There's like a handful of analysts that actually look at the film, that break down the film, that actually understand football. Those are the people who I trust the most because they're actually looking at it and they're not just going off of what everyone else has said previously. But that's what we're seeing a lot more of now, P, is everyone's just, like monkey see, monkey do, right? Like, we're going off of what everyone else is saying because we don't have time to sit here and watch 130 something teams to really know what's going on. You don't have time for that. You're going to pay attention to the teams that are considered in the top 10, and that's where you're going to analyze that. And then, you'll probably have a couple of like outliers that, oh, this is going to be special because of this, or special because of that. Just some kind of stories, but it's not real analysis. And that's the whole point, is that do not wait on the national media to tell you that your team is good, even if you're not a Tennessee fan, because 9 times out of 10, all they know is what somebody else said that they know. They haven't really studied this stuff the way that we do on this channel. But thank y'all so much for sticking all the way to the end. We know that we covered a whole lot, tried to get through it pretty quickly, and we're dealing with some storms here in Georgia. So some of the quality might be, kind of in and out, but we do appreciate y'all for rocking with us. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. Please do consider becoming a member and donating to the channel on Cash App by scanning that barcode. We'll see y'all in just a minute. Thanks. Peace.